The stars burned cold in the Kalrik sector. Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display with tired eyes. For 3 weeks his fleet had been dying slowly. The enemy just kept coming. The Vaxxan swarm never stopped. They were bioships, living weapons grown in massive hive worlds. They looked like giant insects made of bone and muscle, and they traveled in clouds so thick they blocked out the stars. When one died, 10 more took its place. Kethvar was Altarian. His people had explored space for over 10,000 years. They were elegant, wise, and peaceful. War was something they studied in history books, not something they practiced. But the swarm didn't care about history or wisdom. The swarm only knew hunger. Status report, Kethvar said quietly. His tactical officer, a young Altarian named Vess, looked up from her console. Her face was pale. "We lost another cruiser, Admiral. The Bright Wing, all hands." Kethvar closed his eyes for a moment. 300 lives. 300 families who would never see their loved ones again. That made 15 ships lost in 3 weeks. At this rate, they would lose the entire sector in days. "Pull back the defensive line," he ordered. "Give up the outer marker. We consolidate closer to Tertius Prime." Tertius Prime was a colony world. 2 billion civilians lived there. If they lost the planet, those people would die screaming as the swarm consumed everything. Kethvar had seen it happen before. The Vaxxan didn't take prisoners. They just ate. Around his ship, the Coalition fleet struggled to hold the line. There were Zephon destroyers, their crystalline hulls glowing with stored energy. There were massive Gorveth battleships, slow but heavily armored. There were fast Kelvin corvettes darting between the larger ships like silverfish. A dozen species all fighting together, all losing together. The bridge crew worked in tense silence. Everyone knew the truth. They were going to die here. It was just a matter of when. Then Vess spoke again. Her voice was confused. "Admiral, we have a new contact. Single ship, dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system." Kethvar frowned. "Reinforcements?" It was about time. "Identify." Vess worked her console, then looked up with surprise. "It's human, sir. United Colonies naval ship Indomitable. Battleship class." The bridge went silent. Several officers turned to stare. Humans. The newest members of the Coalition. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 100 years ago. Most Coalition species considered them primitives who got lucky. They were aggressive, short-lived, and barely understood proper civilization. What could one human ship possibly do against the swarm? "Should I hail them, sir?" Vess asked. "Yes, warn them off. Tell them to retreat to safe distance." Kethvar pulled up the sensor data on the human ship. It looked strange. Where Coalition ships were smooth and elegant, the human vessel was angular and brutal. It was covered in odd armor plating and bristling with weapons he didn't recognize. It looked like someone had built a ship specifically to hurt things. A holographic window opened. A human woman appeared. She wore a dark blue uniform with gold rank insignia. Her hair was pulled back tight and her eyes were the color of Earth's sky. She looked young by Altarian standards, probably only 50 or 60 human years old. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the UCNS Indomitable," she said. Her voice was calm and professional. "We received your distress signal 3 days ago. We came as fast as we could." Kethvar studied her. Humans were so strange. They lived such short lives, barely 100 years, but they packed so much intensity into that brief time. This Chen looked like she had seen combat before. There was something hard in her eyes. "Captain Chen, I appreciate your response, but this situation is extremely dangerous. The Vaxxan swarm has numerical superiority of approximately 50 to 1. We are conducting a fighting retreat. I strongly suggest you withdraw to a safe distance and wait for—" "With respect, Admiral," Chen interrupted gently. "We didn't come here to watch. We came to fight." Kethvar blinked. "Captain, you don't understand. The swarm will overwhelm a single ship in minutes. Your weapons and shields won't—" "Admiral." Chen's voice was still calm, but there was steel underneath. "We know what we're doing. Where do you need us?" Kethvar looked at his tactical display. The human ship was moving forward, accelerating toward the front line. These humans were either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Probably both, he sighed. If they wanted to throw their lives away, he couldn't stop them. "The weakest point in our line is Sector 7. We expect the next swarm assault there within the hour. If you take position there, you might buy us some time to evacuate civilians from the surface." "Understood." "Indomitable moving to Sector 7. Chen out." The hologram vanished. Kethavar watched as the human battleship accelerated past his fleet. It moved with purpose, taking up position right in the path where the swarm would attack next. The most dangerous position in the entire defensive line. They're going to die, Vess said quietly. Yes, Kethavar agreed. He felt tired. So very tired. But perhaps their sacrifice will buy us a few more hours. Make sure their families know they died bravely. The fleet waited. The human ship sat alone in the darkness, its weapons powered up, its shields glowing, waiting for the swarm. Kethavar had seen many brave soldiers die in this war. He supposed he was about to see more. At least the humans would go down fighting. That was something. He just wished they had lived long enough to learn that bravery wasn't enough against the swarm. Nothing was ever enough. The sensors chirped. Vess looked up, her face pale. Multiple contacts. Thousands of them. The swarm is coming. Admiral Kethavar gripped the arms of his command chair and prepared to watch another ship die. He had no idea that everything he believed about warfare was about to change forever. The Vaxxan swarm came like a living nightmare. Thousands of bioships poured out of the darkness, their organic hulls pulsing with diseased light. They moved in waves, coordinated by some alien intelligence that humans couldn't understand and didn't want to. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Sarah Chen watched them come. Her crew was silent, every person at their station, hands steady on their controls. They had drilled for this. They knew what to do. Tactical report, Chen said calmly. Lieutenant Marcus Webb worked his console. He was a big man with steady hands. Approximately 4,000 hostiles, Captain. Standard swarm formation. They're heading straight for us. Good. Weapons status? All railguns loaded and charged. Mass drivers ready. Rotary cannons have full ammunition. Missile batteries are hot. We're ready to go loud, ma'am. Chen allowed herself a small smile. Then let's show them what humans do best. All hands battle stations. Prepare to engage. Across the Coalition fleet, officers watched in horror as the swarm descended on the lone human ship. Admiral Kethavar leaned forward in his chair, his elegant features twisted with concern. The Indomitable wasn't even retreating. It was accelerating toward the enemy. Are they insane? Vess whispered. Alert all ships, Kethavar ordered. Prepare to cover their retreat when they break. Medical teams stand by to receive survivors. If there are any survivors, he thought, but didn't say. The swarm reached weapons range. The leading edge of bioships began charging their organic weapons, preparing to drown the human vessel in acid and plasma. It was how they always fought. Overwhelm the enemy with sheer numbers, absorb their attacks, then tear them apart. Then the Indomitable opened fire. The human ship lit up like a star going supernova. But instead of energy beams or plasma, what came out was something the Coalition hadn't used in warfare for thousands of years. Solid projectiles, metal. Moving at incredible speeds, the railguns fired first. Magnetic acceleration hurled tungsten rods the size of telephone poles at a significant fraction of light speed. Each round hit with the force of a small nuclear weapon. The first bioship simply exploded. The round kept going, punching through a second ship, then a third, then a fourth. 6 swarm vessels died from a single shot. The mass drivers opened up next. Streams of smaller projectiles, each one the size of a human fist, poured out at thousands of rounds per minute. They hit the swarm formation like a wall of metal death. Bioships that had evolved to absorb and redirect energy simply had no defense against solid matter moving that fast. The projectiles punched through hulls, shredded organs, and kept going. Then the rotary cannons started firing. These were the terrifying offspring of ancient human weapons called miniguns. 6 barrels spinning, each one spitting out depleted uranium rounds at impossible rates. The sound was like thunder that never stopped. The tracers looked like laser beams, but they were just so many bullets that they seemed solid. The front ranks of the swarm simply ceased to exist. On Kethavar's bridge, every officer stood frozen in shock. Their screen showed the swarm formation coming apart like paper in a hurricane. In 30 seconds, the human ship had killed more enemies than the entire Coalition fleet had managed in a week. What are they using? Vess breathed. What kind of weapons are those? Kethavar didn't answer. He couldn't. He was watching something that shouldn't be possible. The swarm tried to adapt. They always did. They split their formation, tried to surround the single human ship. But Chen had expected that. She had studied every battle report, every engagement with the swarm. She knew how they thought. Launch missiles, she ordered. Full spread, delta pattern. The Indomitable's missile batteries opened. Hundreds of missiles streaked out into the darkness. But these weren't the simple guided weapons the Coalition used. These were smart weapons, each one with its own tiny artificial intelligence. They communicated with each other, coordinated their attacks, and actively evaded incoming fire. The swarm had never seen anything like it. Their point defense systems tried to shoot down the missiles and failed. The human weapons jinked and dodged, moved in unpredictable patterns, and worked together like a pack of wolves. Then they started hitting. Each missile carried a fusion warhead. Small tactical nukes, humans called them. The Coalition had banned such weapons 3,000 years ago as barbaric and excessive. Humans had never stopped making them. White fire bloomed across the swarm formation. Each detonation vaporized dozens of bioships. The thermal pulse cooked the organic hulls. The radiation poisoned the living tissue. The electromagnetic pulse shut down their bioelectric systems. It was slaughter on an industrial scale. Chen watched the tactical display with cold professional calm. Continuous fire. Don't let them reform. Webb, target those clusters on the left. They're trying to coordinate a counterattack. On it, ma'am. Railguns firing. More tungsten death lanced out into the darkness. More swarm ships died. The battle lasted 15 minutes. When it was over, more than half the attacking force was destroyed or fleeing. The survivors scattered in all directions, their formation broken. Their attack completely disrupted. The Indomitable hung in space, her hull scorched and pitted from swarm weapons that had gotten through her defenses. But she was intact, operational, ready to fight again. Admiral Kethvar stared at his tactical display. The numbers couldn't be real. But they were. One human ship had just won a battle that should have been impossible. His communications officer spoke in a shaky voice. Admiral Captain Chen is hailing us. Put her through. Chen's face appeared on the holographic display. She looked exactly the same as before, calm, professional, unbothered. There was a small cut on her forehead, probably from when her ship took a hit, but she ignored it. Admiral Kethvar, she said pleasantly, we've secured Sector 7. The enemy has withdrawn. What are your orders? Kethvar found his voice. Captain, how did you... What were those weapons? Chen smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. Kinetics, sir. Railguns, mass drivers, rotary cannons, and good old-fashioned missiles. We still use them because they work. But the Coalition abandoned such primitive weapons millennia ago. Energy weapons are cleaner, more efficient. More efficient at killing swarm? Chen interrupted. Her smile faded. With respect, Admiral, the Coalition has been losing this war for years. Maybe it's time to try something primitive. She was right. Kethvar knew she was right. Everything he had believed about modern warfare had just been proven wrong by this short-lived human and her brutal ship. How many more waves are you expecting? Chen asked. Kethvar checked his intelligence reports. At least 3 more. Maybe 4. They'll send everything they have. Good, Chen said. And she actually meant it. We didn't come all this way to fight just one battle. Indomitable standing by for further orders. Chen out, the hologram vanished. Kethvar sat in his command chair, his mind racing. He looked at Vess. His tactical officer looked back at him with wide eyes. Get me the War Council, Kethvar said slowly. They need to see this. Everything just changed. The conference room aboard Admiral Kethvar's flagship was designed to be calming. The walls showed peaceful scenes from a dozen Coalition worlds. The lighting was soft. The furniture was comfortable. Everything was meant to encourage rational discussion and peaceful diplomacy. Right now, none of it was working. Representatives from 12 Coalition species filled the room, all talking at once. Some were excited. Most were confused. A few were angry. They had all watched the recordings of the human ship's battle against the swarm. They had all seen what shouldn't be possible. Captain Sarah Chen stood at one end of the long table. She wore her uniform and stood with her hands clasped behind her back, waiting patiently for the chaos to calm down. She had expected this reaction. Admiral Kethvar finally raised his hand for silence. Slowly, the room quieted. Thank you all for coming on such short notice, Kethvar began. You've all seen the battle footage. Captain Chen has agreed to answer our questions. Captain? Chen nodded. I'll tell you whatever you want to know. A Zephon officer named Thexel spoke first. His crystalline body chimed softly as he moved. Your weapons. They are kinetic projectiles. We abandoned such technology 5,000 years ago as inefficient and primitive. Why do humans still use them? Chen met his eyes calmly. Because they work. Your energy weapons are elegant and efficient against shields and armor designed to stop energy weapons. The swarm evolved to absorb energy and redirect it. But you can't absorb a chunk of tungsten moving at 10% of light speed. Physics doesn't care about evolution. A Gorvath general, a massive creature covered in thick scales, rumbled. Your missiles. They carried fusion warheads. Nuclear weapons. Such weapons are banned by 17 coalition treaties as weapons of mass destruction. Humans didn't sign those treaties, Chen said simply. We proposed our own version that banned using nukes against civilian targets. But against military targets in space, they're just another tool. Just another tool? A delicate Altarian diplomat looked horrified. Captain, those weapons nearly destroyed your own homeworld during your nuclear age. They represent everything civilization should move beyond. Chen's expression hardened. Yes, they nearly destroyed us. That's why we know how terrible they are. That's why we only use them when we have to. But let me ask you something. How many colonies has the Coalition lost to the swarm in the last year? Silence, uncomfortable silence, 17. Kethavar said quietly. 17 colonies. Tens of billions of lives. And how many have you lost in the last 3 weeks since the Indomitable arrived? Chen asked. None, Kethavar admitted. 0. So maybe, Chen said carefully, maybe civilization isn't about having elegant weapons. Maybe it's about protecting people. Even if the methods aren't pretty. Dexel chimed thoughtfully. You speak of protection, but your entire military philosophy seems built around destruction. Every weapon system we observed is designed for maximum damage. There are no stun settings, no capture protocols, only death. Chen nodded slowly. That's true. Do you know why? She touched a control pad. A holographic image appeared above the table. It showed a blue and green planet, Earth. Humans spent most of our history killing each other, Chen said. Her voice was matter of fact, not proud or ashamed. Just honest. We had wars that killed millions. We invented weapons that could destroy our entire species. We built bombs that could end civilization, and we very nearly used them. The image changed. It showed ruins. Cities reduced to rubble, seas of fire. We learned something that you species never had to learn, Chen continued. We learned that when you fight to win. Because losing means extinction. We didn't unite peacefully. We united because we finally scared ourselves enough to stop fighting each other. But we never forgot how. The Altarian diplomat looked sad. And you brought that violence to the stars. We brought the knowledge of violence to the stars, Chen corrected. There's a difference. We hoped we'd never need it. We hoped space would be peaceful. But then we met the swarm. She changed the image again. Now it showed a colony world burning, civilian ships fleeing, swarm vessels hunting them down and destroying them. This is Theta Colony, human world. The swarm hit it 2 years ago before we joined the coalition. We lost 3 million people before we could evacuate. 3 million civilians. They didn't die quickly. The swarm doesn't kill quickly. Chen's voice remained steady, but something cold moved behind her eyes. After that, we made a choice. We would join the coalition and we would help. But we would help our way, because our way keeps people alive. Kethavar studied the human captain. She was so young by his species standards, but she carried herself like an old soldier, like someone who had seen too much death and refused to see any more. Captain Chen, he said carefully, the coalition has been fighting the swarm for decades using defensive strategies, protecting our territory, minimizing casualties, maintaining our principles. You're suggesting we change everything. I'm suggesting you win, Chen said bluntly. Admiral, how long can you keep playing defense? How many more colonies will you lose? How many more billion lives? The room went quiet. Everyone knew the answer. At their current rate, the coalition would lose the war. It was just a matter of time. What do you propose? Kethavar asked. Chen pulled up a star map. The swarm staging area for this sector is here. System J447. They grow their bioships there, coordinate their attacks, store their resources. It's the heart of their operation. We know, Thexal said. It's also defended by thousands of swarm vessels. Any attack would be suicide. Only if you attack the coalition way, Chen said. She marked several points on the map. If we hit hard and fast, use weapons they can't defend against. Target their production facilities with tactical nukes. We could cripple their entire operation in this sector. The Gorvath general shook his massive head. Impossible. We would need overwhelming force. Or we need one human battleship and a few coalition ships willing to try something new, Chen said. She looked around the table. I'm not asking you to abandon your principles. I'm asking you to try one mission. If it works, we can turn this war around. If it fails, she shrugged. Well, you're losing anyway. What do you have to lose? Admiral Kethvar looked at the faces around the table. He saw doubt, fear, and hope mixed together. These were good people, peaceful people. They didn't want to become warriors. But the swarm didn't give them a choice. I'll do it, he said. My ship will accompany the Indomitable. Who else? Slowly, reluctantly, other officers raised their hands. Not all of them. Some couldn't bring themselves to accept human methods. But enough. Enough to make a strike force, Chen nodded. Thank you. We move out in 6 hours. Get your crews ready. This is going to get rough. As the meeting ended and officers filed out, Kethvar approached Chen privately. Captain, be honest with me. How many ships does humanity have like the Indomitable? Chen smiled. The Indomitable is 70 years old, Admiral. She's our oldest battleship still in active service. We have 73 others, and they're all newer and better than this old girl. Kethvar felt something he hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Real hope. Then perhaps, he said slowly, perhaps we can actually win this war. That's the plan, Chen said. Now let's go prove it. System J447 looked like every pilot's worst nightmare. The sensors showed thousands of contacts. Swarm bioships in various stages of growth floated in massive organic fields. At the center of it all were 3 hive ships, each one the size of a small moon, pulsing with diseased light as they grew new warriors for the endless war. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, studying the tactical display. Behind her ship were 3 coalition vessels, Admiral Kethvar's flagship Radiant Dawn, a Zephon destroyer called Crystal Wind, and a Gorvath heavy cruiser named Iron Mountain. 4 ships against thousands. Tactical analysis, Chen said calmly. Lieutenant Webb worked his console. Not good, ma'am. Estimated enemy forces at 7,000 plus. Those hive ships are each producing approximately 50 new bioships per hour. Defensive formations are thick around the hive structures. Expected, Chen said. She opened a channel to the other ships. All vessels, this is Chen. Remember the plan. We go in fast, we go in hard, we don't stop moving. The moment we slow down, they'll swarm us. Stay close to the Indomitable and follow our lead. Admiral Kethvar's face appeared on a small screen.
Captain, are you certain about this approach?
Coalition doctrine suggests a long-range bombardment followed by... Coalition doctrine is why you've been losing. Chen interrupted, not unkindly. Trust me, Admiral. We've done this before. That wasn't quite true. Humans had never attacked a swarm staging area this large. But Chen had fought in the corporate wars before humanity unified. She had led boarding actions against hostile stations. She knew that sometimes the only way through was straight ahead. All ships, execute, she ordered. The Indomitable's engines flared bright and the battleship accelerated toward the swarm staging area. The 3 coalition ships followed, their crews trying to match the human vessel's aggressive approach. The swarm noticed immediately. Thousands of bioships began moving to intercept. They formed defensive walls of living tissue, preparing to absorb the attack and counterstrike with overwhelming numbers. Chen watched them come. Fire all weapons. Clear us a path. The Indomitable's railguns spoke with thunder. Tungsten rounds tore through the first defensive line like it wasn't there. The mass drivers opened up, creating a storm of metal that shredded organic hulls. The rotary cannons added their voices, tracers lighting up the darkness. Behind the human ship, the coalition vessels added their fire. Energy beams lanced out, targeting the gaps the human weapons created. It was a combination of human brutality and coalition precision, and it was devastatingly effective. Debris field ahead, Webb reported. Dead swarm ships approximately 300 meters. Use it, Chen ordered. Take us through it. The Indomitable dove into the floating wreckage. The dead bioships served as shields, absorbing fire from the living swarm vessels trying to stop the attack. It was a tactic the coalition would never have considered, using corpses as cover. But it worked. A massive swarm warrior, bigger than the others, dove at them from above. Chen saw it coming. Brace for impact. The Indomitable's upper armor took the hit. The bioship tried to latch on, tried to tear into the hull with organic weapons. Chen didn't try to shake it off. She just smiled coldly. Point defense cannons. Fire. The small defensive weapons mounted on the Indomitable's hull opened fire at point-blank range. The swarm warrior shredded apart, its biomass sliding off the armor. Admiral Kethavar watched from the radiant dawn with a mixture of horror and amazement. The humans fought like they were insane. They took damage that would make any coalition captain retreat, and they just kept pushing forward. The Indomitable's hull was scorched and pitted, but the ship never slowed down. "Follow them," Kethavar ordered.
"Stay in their wake." They pushed deeper into the staging area.
The swarm resistance became more coordinated, more desperate. They were trying to protect the hive ships, the vital organs of their operation. Chen checked the distance. 5,000 kilometers to the nearest hive ship. Close enough. Launch nuclear missiles. Full spread. Target all 3 hive ships, ma'am. Webb looked uncertain. "They're too far for accurate." "They're not trying to be accurate," Chen interrupted. "They're trying to be terrifying. Launch." The Indomitable's missile batteries opened. Dozens of nuclear-tipped missiles streaked toward the hive ships. The swarm's defensive forces went crazy, trying to intercept them. They managed to destroy half the missiles. The other half got through. The first hive ship died in a ball of fusion fire. White light expanded, vaporizing everything within 1,000 kilometers. The thermal pulse cooked nearby swarm ships. The radiation spread like poison. The second hive ship took 3 direct hits. It didn't explode. It just came apart. Sections of its massive hull broke free and drifted. The bioship production stopped immediately. The third hive ship tried to flee. Chen targeted it with the railguns. 3 tungsten rods hit it within seconds of each other. The massive structure shuddered, then began to collapse in on itself. The swarm forces went chaotic. Without the hive ships coordinating them, they lost cohesion. Some fled, some attacked wildly. Some just drifted, confused and lost. "All ships fighting withdrawal," Chen ordered. "We've done what we came for. Time to leave." The strike force turned and began fighting their way back out. The swarm tried to stop them, but it was disorganized now. The human and coalition ships worked together, covering each other, supporting each other's attacks. The Iron Mountain took heavy damage when 3 swarm warriors hit it simultaneously. The Gorvath ship's shields failed and its hull began to breach. Kethavar started to order a rescue operation, but Chen was already there. The Indomitable positioned itself between the damaged cruiser and the swarm. Taking hits meant for the coalition ship. Chen's voice came over the comm, calm despite the impacts shaking her bridge. "Iron Mountain, get your engines back online. We'll cover you." The Gorvath captain, a grizzled warrior named Throck, felt something he hadn't expected. Gratitude, respect. The human ship was taking damage to protect his vessel, taking damage willingly. "Engines restored," he reported. "We can move." "Then move," Chen said. "All ships jump point in 30 seconds. Push hard." They made it. Barely. The Indomitable was the last ship through, her hull smoking, system sparking, but operational. As they entered faster than light travel, Chen allowed herself to slump in her chair. "Damage report," she said tiredly. Webb ran the numbers. "Hull breaches on decks 4, 7, and 9. We lost the number 3 railgun completely. Shields are at 20% and..." He paused. 47 dead, ma'am. 123 wounded." Chen closed her eyes. 47 people who had families waiting for them, who had lives they would never live. It never got easier. "Start rescue and repair operations," she ordered quietly, "and begin preparing casualty notifications. Their families deserve to know." On the radiant dawn, Admiral Kethavar looked at the strategic display. The raid had destroyed 40% of the swarm's production capacity in the sector. It was the single most damaging blow the coalition had ever struck, and it had cost 47 human lives. Plus 8 coalition casualties. Kethavar thought about those numbers. By coalition standards, the casualties were horrific. By human standards, it was an acceptable trade. That was the difference. Humans understood that winning wars meant people died. The coalition had tried to fight a clean war, and they had been losing. Perhaps, Kethavar thought, it was time the coalition learned from these strange, violent, short-lived humans. Perhaps it was time to actually win. The Indomitable limped back to Tertius Prime looking like she had been through hell. Because she had. Scorch marks covered her hull. Entire sections were exposed to space. One of her main railguns hung at an angle, twisted and useless. But she was still flying, still ready to fight if needed. Captain Sarah Chen walked through the damaged corridors, checking on her crew. In sickbay, doctors worked to save the wounded. In engineering, repair teams welded hull breaches and rerouted damaged systems. Everyone worked with grim determination. This was what humans did. They got hurt, they fixed themselves, and they prepared to do it again. A young ensign, his arm in a medical brace, saluted as Chen passed. She stopped. "You should be in sickbay," she said. "Already been, ma'am," the ensign replied. He was barely 20 years old. "They patched me up. I'm needed at my station," Chen studied him. He was scared. She could see it in his eyes. But he was here anyway, doing his job. That was courage. Real courage. "Carry on, ensign," she said. "And thank you." On the observation deck, Admiral Kethvar waited. Chen found him staring out at the stars, his elegant features troubled. He turned when she entered. "Captain Chen, I wanted to speak with you privately." "Of course, Admiral." Kethvar gestured at the Indomitable's damaged hull, visible through the viewport. "Your casualties. 47 dead. For my people, that would be unacceptable. We have technology to fight from greater distances to minimize losses. Yet you charge directly into combat. Why?" Chen was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke carefully. "Tell me, Admiral, how many civilians has the Coalition lost to the Swarm in the last year?" "Billions," Kethvar admitted quietly. 17 colonies. Tens of billions of lives. And how many military personnel? Perhaps 200,000. Across all species, Chen nodded. The Coalition tries to minimize military casualties. That's admirable. But while you protect your soldiers, civilians die by the billions. We humans made a different choice. She looked out at the stars. We decided that soldiers exist to protect civilians. Not the other way around. We accept higher military losses to end wars faster, to protect more civilians. Those 47 people who died, they died so that billions of civilians on Tertius Prime could live. They understood that. They accepted it. Kethvar was silent. Finally, he said, "You humans are so young. Your average lifespan is barely 100 years. Don't you value life more because you have so little of it?" "We value life exactly because we have so little of it," Chen replied. "Every second matters. That's why we fight so hard. That's why we won't quit. We know death is coming for all of us eventually. We just refuse to let it come for others while we can still fight." An Altarian medical officer approached hesitantly. She had been treating the human wounded. "Captain Chen? May I ask you something?" "Of course. How do you accept these losses? In my culture, every death is mourned for months. Every loss is a tragedy we carry forever. Yet you humans seem to just keep going." Chen's expression softened. "We mourn too. We carry our dead with us, but we can't stop fighting just because people died. If we stop, more people die, so we honor them by finishing what they started. We remember them by winning." She pulled out a small data pad and showed it to the Altarian. It displayed 47 names. "I memorize every casualty on my ship. Every name. Every face. I write letters to their families. I tell them their loved ones mattered, that their sacrifice meant something. It's the least I can do." The Altarian doctor looked at the list, then at Chen's young face. How did someone so young carry so much death? Yet Chen stood straight, her eyes clear. The weight didn't break her. It made her stronger. "You humans are remarkable," the doctor said quietly. "And terrifying." "We're just what we had to become to survive," Chen replied. Admiral Kethvar straightened. "Captain, the War Council has made a decision. They're requesting your presence. And mine." The War Council meeting was held via holographic communication. Representatives from dozens of Coalition worlds appeared as glowing figures around a virtual table. They had all seen the reports from the raid. They had all studied the battle data. Chancellor Vexrin of the Altarian Council spoke first. "Captain Chen, Admiral Kethvar, your raid was successful beyond our expectations. The Swarm's capacity in the Calric sector has been significantly reduced. However, we have concerns about the methods used." "With respect, Chancellor," Chen said, "my methods kept your colonies safe." "At a cost," Vexrin replied. "The use of nuclear weapons, the aggressive tactics, the casualty rates, these are not how civilized species wage war." Chen felt anger stir in her chest but kept her voice level. "How many civilized species has the Swarm conquered? How many peaceful cultures has it consumed? The Swarm doesn't care about your civilization. It only understands violence. A Gorvath representative, General Throck, whose ship the Indomitable had saved, spoke up. The human is right. I have fought the swarm for 20 years. Nothing we tried ever worked. One human ship accomplished more in one day than we managed in months. Perhaps our way is not working. The council argued for hours. Some species refused to accept human tactics. They withdrew from the military coalition, choosing neutrality over what they saw as barbarism. Chen didn't try to change their minds. She understood. They were peaceful people who wanted to stay peaceful, but enough species voted to continue. Enough agreed that winning the war was more important than maintaining perfect principles. Very well, Chancellor Vexrin announced. The coalition authorizes a full offensive against the swarm. Admiral Kethvar will command coalition forces. Captain Chen will command human forces. Together, you will plan an assault on the swarm's primary hive world in this sector. After the meeting ended, Kethvar approached Chen. The human fleet. When will it arrive? Chen smiled. Check your sensors, Admiral. Kethvar pulled up the tactical display and his eyes widened. 6 human battleships had just dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. 20 destroyers, 30 support vessels, and a massive ship in the center that made the Indomitable look small. That's the UCNS Defiant, Chen said, our newest carrier. She's got 300 fighters and enough firepower to crack a planet. The rest of the fleet is similar. We don't do anything small, Admiral. Kethvar stared at the fleet. Each ship looked like the Indomitable. Brutal, functional, covered in weapons. They looked like they had been designed by people who understood war at a fundamental level. People who had fought each other for thousands of years before finally achieving peace. How long do we have to prepare? Kethvar asked. 3 days, Chen said. Then we hit the swarm's main hive world. We end this war, one way or another. Kethvar looked at the human fleet, then at Chen's determined face. These humans were strange, violent, and terrifyingly effective. But they were exactly what the coalition needed. Then let's end it, he said. The swarm's primary hive world was called Designation 0 by coalition intelligence. It was where the swarm and the entire sector was born, coordinated and controlled. A massive bio-world covered in organic structures that pulsed with terrible life. Millions of bioships orbited it like a diseased cloud. The combined fleet approached in formation. 6 human battleships formed the spearhead, their weapons hot and ready. Behind them came 20 human destroyers, fast and deadly. The coalition fleet followed, 200 ships from a dozen species, all of them ready to fight in a way they never had before. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Sarah Chen watched the tactical display. The numbers were worse than anything they'd faced. 500,000 enemy contacts, maybe more. This was everything the swarm had in the sector. All ships. This is Captain Chen. She broadcast on the fleet-wide channel. Today we end this war. Today we show the swarm that the galaxy isn't theirs to consume. Today we fight not just for our own survival, but for every species that comes after us. Make every shot count. Make every sacrifice matter. For humanity. For the coalition. For everyone who can't fight for themselves. Admiral Kethvar watched from the radiant dawn. He had added his own message to the coalition ships, reminding them that they fought for civilization itself. Now, as the swarm began, moving to meet them, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Real hope. These humans, with their brutal weapons and their refusal to quit, had given him that. The swarm attacked first. They always did. A wall of bioships hundreds of kilometers wide rushed toward the fleet, ready to overwhelm and consume. The human battleships opened fire. The universe lit up with destruction. Railguns fired in sequence, each one throwing tungsten death into the swarm formation. Mass drivers created walls of metal that nothing could pass through. The rotary cannons sang their terrible song, tracers lighting up the darkness like 1,000,000 deadly fireflies. Behind the human ships, the coalition fleet added their precision fire. Energy beams targeted the gaps, exploiting the weaknesses the kinetic weapons created. It was a symphony of destruction, each species contributing what they did best. The swarm died in waves, but there were so many of them. For every 100 they killed, 1,000 more came. The bioships began to surround the fleet, trying to use their numbers to smother the attack. Chen saw it happening. All human ships, Formation Delta, push through the center. Coalition fleet, cover our flanks. The human battleships formed a wedge and accelerated directly into the thickest part of the swarm. It was insane. It was suicide. It was exactly what the swarm didn't expect. The Indomitable took the lead position. Chen gripped the arms of her command chair as enemy fire hammered the shields. The ship shook like it would tear apart. But she held course. "Missile batteries, fire everything," she ordered. "Target the hive world surface." Hundreds of nuclear missiles launched. They streaked toward the planet, jinking and dodging through the defensive fire. Many died, but many more got through. The surface of the hive world erupted in fusion fire. The organic structures that grew new bioships vaporized. The massive neural nodes that coordinated the swarm burned. White light spread across the diseased surface like cleansing fire. The swarm formation wavered. The hive mind controlling them was being destroyed. Individual bioships began acting without coordination, attacking randomly or fleeing in panic. "Press the attack," Kethvar ordered. The coalition fleet surged forward, their confidence growing. They could win this. They were winning this. But the swarm wasn't finished. Deep beneath the hive world's surface, massive structures began to activate. Dozens of superorganisms, each one as large as a battleship, tore free from the planet and rushed toward the fleet. These were the swarm's final defense, grown over centuries and held in reserve for exactly this kind of threat. They were faster than normal bioships, stronger, and they were heading straight for the human battleships. "All ships concentrate fire on those big ones," Chen ordered. But there were too many of them, and they were too close. One of the superorganisms hit the UCNS Defiant, the massive carrier. The bioship wrapped around the human vessel like a nightmare coming to life, tearing into the hull with organic weapons. The Defiant's shields failed. Its armor began to breach. Chen didn't hesitate. "Indomitable to Defiant. Hold on. We're coming." The Indomitable accelerated toward the struggling carrier. Every weapon fired at the superorganism, trying to destroy it before it could kill the Defiant. Railguns, mass drivers, missiles, everything they had. The superorganism died, but not before the Defiant took catastrophic damage. The carrier began to drift, its engines dead. Life support failing. "All ships, this is Chen. Cover the Defiant. Get rescue ships in there now." The fleet rallied around the damaged carrier. Human destroyers formed a protective wall. Coalition ships provided suppressing fire. Marine assault shuttles launched, heading for the Defiant to evacuate survivors. Chen saw another superorganism heading for a coalition ship, the Crystal Wind, the Zephon destroyer. The crystalline ship's elegant hull would shatter under that kind of attack. "Webb, give me a collision course," Chen ordered. Her tactical officer looked up in shock. "Ma'am, you heard me. Ramming speed." "Captain, we can't." "Now, Lieutenant." The Indomitable turned and accelerated directly at the superorganism. The crew grabbed onto their stations. Everyone knew what was about to happen. The impact was tremendous. The Indomitable's armored bow hit the bioship at full speed. Metal and organic matter collided. The superorganism died instantly, crushed by the human ship's mass. The Indomitable survived. Barely. Her bow was crumpled. Her forward sections were open to space. But she had saved the Crystal Wind. The Zephon ship was intact. On the radiant dawn, Admiral Kethvar watched in amazement. The human ship had just used itself as a weapon. These people didn't just fight to win. They fought to protect others, even at terrible cost to themselves. The battle continued for hours. Slowly, impossibly, the combined fleet began to win. The swarm's coordination collapsed completely as the hive world died. The remaining bioships scattered or shut down, their controlling intelligence destroyed. By the time the sun rose over Designation Zero, now just a dead world, the swarm was broken. The sector was free. Captain Sarah Chen walked through the Indomitable's damaged corridors. The casualties were heavy. 3 human battleships destroyed, 2 more crippled beyond immediate repair, 4,000 human dead, 8,000 coalition casualties, but they had won. Tens of billions of civilians saved. The swarm defeated. The war in this sector at least was over. Admiral Kethavar found Chen in the observation deck looking at the ruins of the hive world. The Altarian admiral stood beside her in silence for a moment. "Your ship saved mine twice," he said quietly. "Your people paid a terrible price for this victory." "Yes," Chen agreed. "But it was worth it. Not because we wanted to fight, but because fighting was the only way to stop the swarm from killing everyone else." Kethvar nodded slowly. "The Council wants to honor your fallen. Build monuments, write songs." Chen smiled sadly. "Just remember them. Remember what they did. And if another threat comes, remember that sometimes peace isn't possible. Sometimes you have to fight. The Coalition learned that today." "We learned it from you," Kethvar said, "from humanity." Chen looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, more human ships patrolled. More threats waited. Humanity had come to space hoping for peace, and instead found war. But they had faced it with courage, determination, and a refusal to let others suffer. "We're not special," Chen said. "We're just people who learned that survival means being willing to fight for it. Any species can do what we do. They just have to be willing to pay the price." The Indomitable began the long journey home, battered but unbroken. Behind her, a sector of space was free. And across the galaxy, the swarm learned a new emotion, one they had never felt before. They learned to fear humanity, and the galaxy learned that when a human battleship arrives, the battle will never be the same again.